Happy afternoon, Joe. How are you?
Hi, David. Good, thank
Very
you.
good.
I'm just getting my
Very good
video on.
afternoon.
How have you
It's
been?
good, good. Is Melbourne
Yeah,
been cool or warm for you? Where are you, in Melbourne or Sydney?
I'm Sydney.
Oh,
It's sunny today, but it's still really cold. It's got that
I know.
awful chill to it.
I know it's freezing up here. Though we're in
Yeah,
tropical Queensland, it's cold. It's cold for
I've
me.
got my sister lives in Cairns and even she's
Oh,
complaining it's cold.
I know. It's been a horrendous year actually with weather up and down
Yeah, yeah,
months
it's
and
been a
the
bit
like.
rough.
So tell me, how you been going with coaching, and we were going to talk a little bit on the purpose. I just wanted to sort of get your
You
perspective on that.
know,
But
yeah, really well. Like I love coaching. I've been doing it for
Mhm.
longer than I've been doing it online, and it just makes sense to me. It
Right,
really just
yeah,
does make sense.
yeah. I went into it by default more than good management by the coaching, because
Yeah.
when I was in India, I started working with organizations who were wanting help, and that's how I sort of
Mm,
got thrown into it. But I loved it.
right.
It gives you a total buzz when you're working with different types of people, different cata. And
Yeah, absolutely.
mentoring was fantastic for me. I loved it because I was working with a sector of the community. So
Mm.
it was good. What's your brief? How did you get into coaching and training? Were you in that all your time or?
No, well, similar story to you, I think. Fell into it. So I was working in insurance
Oh,
and I had the CEO of the organization I worked for came up one day and literally sat on my desk and said, "We're about to go to market on a major product and I want you to be our trainer." And I laughed. I said, "No, no, 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 no. I don't public speak. I no, I'm not a trainer." I think I was about 29 at the time. I said, "No, I'm not a trainer." He says,
right,
"Well, you actually are, but you don't know it yet." And he told me, he said, "I've picked you, and I'm not advertising this role unless I have to, but I've picked you because I've noticed that you never say." And I
fabulous.
thought,
Wow.
wow. First thing I thought is, oh, my dad will be so proud. Because he was the one that was rough on me when I was a kid with my articulation and my how I utilize my words and the choices of words. And so he was very, very critical of that with the best
Right,
intentions. So for a
right,
manager to then say, "I think you should be our trainer," I thought, oh my gosh, my dad's just going to go nuts over this. So I did. Became the trainer. I was in training for about 15 years. And then I was in a role where I was managing a team in a life insurance business. And it was really difficult team to manage because they were doing high-end mental health claims. So we
right,
were specifically working on people which had quite significant mental health conditions and quite a few fraudulent claims in the midst of that as well.
sure.
And I found that while I was helping the case managers on their actual portfolio on how to work with the clients, I was basically life coaching the staff.
Right.
And I
Yeah.
was doing that for 12 months within my role as an employee there before they kind of cottoned on that Joe's doing all this coaching stuff and she's actually filling a niche that we don't have yet. So then they created a coaching role. So what I was doing is actually coaching the staff on life issues and portfolio management and whatever they needed at any given time. And
Right.
it was an immense success. They ended up creating a whole team of my role.
Wow. That's fabulous. That's credit to you in
Yeah.
how you steered that through. That's fantastic.
Yeah, I was very
That
grateful that they could do that.
right. That mental resilience is a challenge. I mean, that's what got me to default into another mastermind. I'm running about four of this, but the other mastermind
Yeah.
I'm conducting in India out of four
Mm,
continents is what prompted this book to come out. It's Mental
right.
Resilience Mastery is the mastermind.
Ah,
And we
right.
had about 51 people in it, and 30 of them
Yeah.
have come down and spoke with them, drilled them for the last 12 weeks. And they're in a state where they are, good,
Mm,
coming from a variety of professions,
mm,
and steered them into writing a book, co-authoring a book.
right.
And we have just to the final stage of pagination now to launch that.
Fantastic. Congratulations.
That's what prompted. Yeah, thank you. But we've not got there yet. We are on the journey. But that's what prompted me to get, to talk to different people on their purpose, and that's my intent. Hopefully, I could get something from you on what and how you went through your purpose, and how did that become your core. I think it is your core driver.
I think there's a good chance that I have a similar story to a lot of people, which effectively is I'm bouncing along life. I'm doing what I think I'm supposed to do. I was given very strict parameters of what a successful life looks like for a female. It was marry a guy who earns good money, make sure he looks good in a suit, make sure that you've got the nice house, the nice car, the 2.4 children, the overseas trips every year. Your job is to look good and to make him look good and look after the kids, earn a decent income, but never better than his. And the two of you together will effectively have a very nice life.
Right.
And that was exactly what I was told to do. I didn't end up having that life for a long time. My marriage dissolved, and that was one of two defining moments for me. When my marriage dissolved, I went into survival for 2 years, and it was do what I need to do to keep all the balls in the air. And that's exactly what I did. Because of my mental resilience, I didn't recognize that I was actually driving myself into the ground. And then my body finally gave up one day. Found myself in hospital. Big long story around that, but basically I found myself in hospital, rushed into isolation, surrounded by doctors in gowns and gloves and masks, and nobody's near me. There's a big sign on the door, a quarantine sign, and they're saying, if we didn't quarantine you, you could die. You're that sick. Wow. Apparently what had happened, I'd been carrying a virus for a number of months, and it had been depleting my immune system. At that stage, it was so depleted that a single sneeze from someone with an actual flu would have killed me.
My gosh.
So I'm very grateful for those two events. The first one, because it put me on a path where I was able to really push my mental resilience and my capabilities to understand what I could do. And the amount of times I overrode tiredness, the amount of times I overrode a foggy mind, they're countless in that period of time. And I always got it done. But then when I walked out the second time and realized that I'd actually almost mentally gotten myself into a point of being in a grave, I realized something had to change. And that's when I found really and started looking really for, what am I here to do now? What is this thing? And I started going and looking at what makes me happy and what am I naturally good at? And I didn't think I was really naturally good at anything. But around that time, I started asking people questions. Well, what am I good at? What do I do? What could I do? Because I had limited myself to this job that fit my marriage.
Yes.
And I thought, what if I could do bigger? People keep telling me I'm exceptional. I keep getting all these high performance opportunities, and I play small and I feel my role as a wife, but I'm not a wife anymore. And so what is the ceiling, and does there have to be one? And I quickly worked out the ceiling is defined by what I'm willing to do.
Yes.
And from then it's really about what lights me up. And for me, it was always something service oriented. I'm very big on continuous learning. I'm very big on having intellectual, deep conversations. So it made perfect sense for me to go into coaching and utilize neurology and constant learning. And then now for me, it's the constant learning shows up through understanding neurological flow, understanding biohacking, understanding what you can do with your body, pushing my limits constantly, just to see. Because I know that I got myself to the point of almost death without even realizing it.
Yeah.
So I wonder what I could do consciously.
That's fabulous. I mean, it's amazing. It's always when your back is to the wall that such realizations happen. And it's as you said, it's a light bulb moment for the switch to happen. And you've been able to
it totally is. Absolutely. And the fight or flight's huge.
Yes, exactly. What about when now that you've got some clarity, obviously it gives you direction and purpose. How did you find when you started working with people who didn't have that sort of a drive or purpose?
The first thing I had to do was accept. When I did NLP training a couple of years back, the coach actually said a statement on day one, which was really challenging to me. And he said, everybody's doing the best they can with what they have at the time.
Yes.
And straight away, my defenses went up and said, that's a load of crap. No way. I'm sorry. No. And then I started to understand the reason for it, that in actual fact, that statement is for me, not for them. And then
Yes.
I could understand the ins and outs of that. But when I started in coaching, I was very much on the, well, why don't you just do it? You're telling me that you want it, and you're telling me that's the direction that you want to take, but you're not doing it. Why don't you just do it? Because otherwise you really don't want it. And I still coach like that to a significant degree. It's, well, if you want it, you'll always find time. And that's one of the statements I come back to regularly. If it's a priority, you'll always fit it in. If you want it, you'll always find time. And then we start digging deeper as to, well, maybe I really don't want it. Maybe it's like a 4 out of 10, not a 10 out of 10. And I'm like, cool. Well, now you're aligning yourself with what you really are at, as opposed to what you think you should do.
Yes. And when you find that gap is there, do you sometimes encourage them to sort of get over the hurdle? Because some of them might need that little nudge.
It depends on the client. So I'm very intuitive with my clients. I have some clients that have hired me and they say, I just want you to bulldoze me.
Yes.
I literally want you to come in and be a drill sergeant and make me feel like I'm accountable. So I get to the point where I desperately just don't want to not do something and come up to our coaching sessions having not done the work. Like, okay, well, I can coach like that for you, but that means I'm not really coaching as much as I am pushing. It's not the way I go about doing it. So when I do that with some clients, I'll shift it and I'll say, for the first X amount of time, I'll be the drill sergeant. Okay. But then the goal is to shift into more of a coaching model, because you would have earned your stripes by then. Will increase your self-resilience. You'll have a better feeling for who you are and what you are. And then from there, we can increase into the coaching space and start digging deeper. Some other clients, they just want to be coached the whole way. For me, so long as they're doing the work and committing to themselves, it's not about committing to me, it's about committing to themselves and keeping their promises to themselves. I'll just shift between whatever's required.
And you find the mass majority of people, when they say something, because of the environment that they've come through, they still initially would need that nudge. But once they get into the habit, the shift in the habit, they're already running on their own stream. And you find that
exactly. Right. And the thing about it is, once they become aware and they start playing in the group coaching space with me, they work out where in the hierarchy they sit. It's, well, okay, am I one of those top end people that's really competitive or super successful, or am I one of those people that's just so new that I'm not? And they'll work out very quickly the lay of the land. I choose my clients so they've all got a little bit of a competitive nature with them. So when I drop them into the group container, if they're sitting at the bottom of the barrel, they're not going to be there for long, because they're going to see people at the top and it'll be, well, I want that.
Yes, exactly. And they will reach up, either they reach up or they drop out, one or the other. And you've got the option. Yeah, that's really good, Joe. Joe, what is your drive? What is the thing that drives you as an individual to keep going with your need to want to help people?
It's way past motivation. It's way past drive. The only way I can adequately describe it is an obsession.
Right.
And once upon a time, the word obsession was a dirty word, but now I actually think it's an amazing word to utilize to describe someone's passion towards something, because you can be passionate about something, but still not take immense action towards it. So for me, it's motivation, drive, passion, obsession. And Brendan Burchard talks about being obsessed, and all of the high-end performers always talk about, if you want to get there, you have to be obsessed. So for me, that's really what it is. It's just this obsession, because I see how easily I did what I did, and even post burnout got myself from being in this awful position to living this amazing life again on my own and on my own terms. And I think, well, if I can do that and I'm a nobody, and by all intents and purposes, I shouldn't have been able to. So if I can do that, anybody can do that. And so it's really about affirming people and saying, hey, I get that you've had stuff go on. We've all got stuff go on. It's not going to stop. but it's how you respond to it that makes the difference between whether you're going to be motivated by external factors or even intrinsically motivated for short periods of time, or whether you're going to find something that's your purpose that you can get obsessed about.
How true, how true. It's interesting you use the word obsession, because I first started using that in about early 2003, 2004. And a couple of guys that came in, it was a clinical psychologist group that I was working with. And to them, obsession was a negative word.
Negative word, yeah.
Yeah. And I said, no, I'm just totally entrenched in it. It's in my DNA.
Yeah.
And suddenly the penny dropped. You know, when I used that term, the penny dropped. So I really relate to what you're saying. That's fabulous. I got that shift, just to share a little bit. I got that shift when I was working with John Grinder. He taught me a lot of the NLP practices because I understudied with John. And that came through so strong that unless you throw this passionately into you, your buzz is not going to come out.
You need to be able to, it's got to come from internally. And I learned that the hard way. I didn't understand. When I was going through difficulties in my marriage, before we'd actually separated, I'd have people say to me at my job, "You've lost your lights. You know, we're worried about you," because I was not telling anyone what was going on. "What's wrong? You've lost your light. You usually bounce in here and we rely on you doing that, and you're not doing that, and we don't know what to do." I didn't recognize until that time that how I showed up had an impact. I knew that it did, but I didn't understand how big an impact it was and how much responsibility it was, because I'm one of those genetically lucky people that vibe at a higher level to start with.
Yes.
So for me, I get to keep that as my normal, but then I didn't realize the impact it has on the people around me. And when I started to become aware, then I also simultaneously accepted the responsibility to do that as part of my ongoing life, no matter what happens.
Hence, you became accountable to that as your drive.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And that's why I use, I don't know if you've heard of Peter Crone. He's the mindset architect, and he's amazing. I love his work, and he talks about suffering as a choice.
Yes.
And you got Tony Robbins that talks about beautiful state, suffering is a choice, suffering is a choice. And I started to implement that in my life. And as my clients progressed through, they always had this beautiful aha moment, which is, I realize what you're talking about now when you say suffering is a choice. I can control this. I can control how it impacts me or whether it impacts me. And if I need to do anything or nothing. And I'm like, exactly. It's not the bad things don't happen, is that you look at it quite pragmatically and say, okay, here it is. What do I do with it?
Yeah. How true. How true. And that's being controlling or a controller of your own life. And when you can get to that state, you're home and house, because then you're directing everything that you want. It
makes a huge difference. I mean, the Shaolin teach this so beautifully when they talk about the push and the pull energy.
Yes.
And I love all of the Eastern philosophies. I spent a lot of time reading up about them. But for me, the beauty is in anything you try and pull towards you that doesn't want to be there will inevitably try and pull itself away, and it will go away from you. And then anything that you try and push away that doesn't want to go away from you will inevitably try and come back. So you've constantly got this push-pull energy. But what if we sat in a space of equanimity and said, okay, it's going to do whatever it does around me, but in my vibrational field, I don't need to let it impact me.
Let it just flow into you and flow out as it feels.
Exactly. Because as you know, energy is energy. It comes to us. We transpose it into sending it back out the way it came in, or sending it back as something else.
So true. Powerful. Hey, lady, thank you so much. I mean, I'd love to sit down and talk a lot longer with you, but I know your time is short, and I just wanted to take 20 minutes of it. So I appreciate your time. Truly enjoyed your company, and hopefully we'll connect again soon.
Sounds like a great idea. Enjoy the rest of your day.
You too, Joe. Thank you so much. Take care now. Ciao.
Anytime. Bye.